Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. Today I have another mega video for you full of 25 fall DIYs that are each less than $5. These are all easy to create and would be a beautiful addition to anyone's fall home decor. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing. If you love any of today's projects or even just love watching budget DIYs, I would love if you would give this video a thumbs up. But let's go make some DIYs. I love picking up these different blocks at Dollar Tree. They come out every season with a few different designs of these, and I'll pick them up 2 or 3 at a time and have them for different projects. Now this is just a piece that I had used prior just in my stash, and it's about 5 inches. The measurement really doesn't matter too much. You just do what's going to fit your pieces that you're using, and I'll show you kind of what I mean in a moment here. Now the paint that I'm using is just some chalk paint, and I'm doing a very messy coat on here. I did just use some water, like a spray bottle of water and a putty knife to scrape off the original design from Dollar Tree, so that's how you would get that off. Now I'm just taking some scrapbook paper here. This one came from Hobby Lobby, I believe last year or the year before. They have very similar designs from year to year, so just get what matches your decor. And I traced out that little rectangle shape there, and then I will just cut outside of my line there. So I want this to be just slightly bigger than my surface because I want to clean it up, and I'll show you that here in a moment. To get this paper adhered to my surface, I'm just using my trusty purple Elmer school glue. You guys, I love this stuff, and if you like using it in your craft projects, I'm going to tell you a little secret. This time of year and fall time at back to school, the back to school stuff will start to go on clearance as the kids go back to school. And I swear they always have, at least at my Walmarts, they always have a ton of this glue, and they mark it down super cheap, like 25 cents for one of those big things that's normally like $2.50 or something. So watch for that because it's a great deal. I buy it in bulk, and I totally stock up on it this time of year when it's back to school. Now I'm taking my brayer, and I'm just going to roll this on here, and that's going to get out any air bubbles. It's going to make sure that you get a good bond between your paper and your surface. Now the paper where it's slightly bigger, you're going to have a little bit of it hanging over the edge, and that's exactly what we want, because we'll take a fingernail file, and I'm just going to file slowly in a downward motion on this paper here against the surface, and you can see that edge coming off. So it's going to make that edge look completely like it was made to go on this surface. So it's going to make them look as one, not that it was paper glued to your surface. Now I decided to take this a step further, and I am sanding a little bit more into the paper and the block, just because I wanted a little bit more of a rounded edge to it, so in the rounded corner, so it did look a little more rustic. That's definitely my style. It just depends on if that's something you want to do or not. If you don't want to take this step, by all means don't. Now you can see that there's a little bit of the whiteness to the paper there from it being sanded. So I'm just taking a little bit of antiquing wax, just any antiquing wax, water-based will work, and I'm using a baby wipe, but a wet paper towel would also work. And I'm just going to go around this edge, and it's just going to tone that down so you don't see the white. I decided to kind of go over the paper there, and then the rest of the block with the little bit of antiquing wax also, just to tone that white down just a little bit. That's something that wouldn't be necessary, but once I started doing it, I really did like the way that it looked. So this has been sitting in my stash for a couple of years. It's just a pumpkin like pick for your planters boxes, like on your porch or something. You could easily use these from Dollar Tree. You could use something from a sign like this right here. I've also seen different picks at Walmart that you could grab to use. You just need a pumpkin shape that's a little bit smaller than your surface. So I just took the backing or that stick off of my pumpkin, and then I'm sitting here with some Spanish moss trying to decide whether or not to put this on. It's a very nice clean look without it. However, I do end up liking the texture that this Spanish moss adds. Plus it gives you a good surface to glue your pumpkin to. It really is a matter of if you like it or if you don't. I did end up liking it just because I love to add different texture to different projects. I felt it almost added a little bit of a French country touch to this, and so I definitely loved it. So I'm just using some hot glue to glue that down, and we're talking just the littlest bit of Spanish moss. Don't overdo it and have it look like a bird's nest or anything, or have it be too shaggy. You want it so it's not going to get all over your house or anything like that. But just be careful when you're gluing it down, because the glue does seep through there, and every time I do this, I swear I end up going, ouch, that's hot. I forget. So just remember that. Then I just used some hot glue to glue this pumpkin on top of that Spanish moss, and look at how beautiful this turns out. This turns out so simple, and I just think it will be the perfect little piece to sit on a shelf or to tuck in your home decor for fall. If you even wanted to take it a step further and put some words on it over the paper there, or paint it a solid color, put something on it. I just love the simplicity of this paper though. I'm very anxious to know what you guys think of this project. Do you guys like it? This is another one of those projects that's really fun to do with your leftover fall floral scraps that you might have. This is just a little votive from Dollar Tree. It's from a number of years ago. My daughter was cleaning out her room and she was kind of done with some of her little trinkets and things, and this was one of the pieces she gave to me and was like, Mom, can you do anything with this? And I thought, I'm going to turn this into a pumpkin. So you'll have to let me know if it actually looks like a pumpkin in the end. But I did just paint it with some pumpkin Waverly chalk paint to get that nice orange color there. And then I'm just going to glue some styrofoam in there so we can get to putting our little bits of florals in there. Now I'm just going to put a good layer of the Spanish moss on the top here, just with some hot glue. Whenever you're doing this with Spanish moss and hot glue, just know that that hot glue can seep through there and burn your fingers really easily. So wear finger protectors, or just be very aware of that when you're doing that. I just am speaking from experience of burning myself more than once, many times actually, when I'm doing this process. So just be careful. Now I just have some different little scraps here. You can see off to the side there, I had originally had those flowers. I thought maybe I would use some of those, but I ended up just taking a couple little sprigs off of there. I have a lot of florals that I've just picked up at Dollar Tree or the craft store over the years that I'll just take a little piece here or a piece there, and even when I'm done with them and have some extra little pieces, I just keep them in a bag with my fall crafting stuff. So that way, because you're always just looking for a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and it's fun to have a project that you can kind of pull those out and use those for. So you can kind of see here, I'm going for a little bit of an asymmetrical look. Now this is a little stick from our farm. I gathered a bunch of sticks last fall that I ended up using for some fall and Christmas projects. So it's always fun to have those on hand. But that's my pumpkin stem, so you'll have to just keep that in mind as we're going on here. And I just kind of was anything orange or red or yellow, kind of adding that in. And I had this little succulents that was from Dollar Tree from another project that I had, and so I just kind of stole it from that and stuck it in the side there. And then I'm just gluing a little bit of reindeer moss, just little scraps that I have, just to kind of bring a little bit more greenery into that Spanish moss. But I think this looks really cute. I don't know if it necessarily looks like a pumpkin, but I'm going to go with it. It looks fall, regardless of whether it looks like a pumpkin or not. But I just think this would be so cute on a tiered tray or a shelf, just to have a project to do something with all of those little bits of florals that you might have, or a votive that maybe you're done with. It was just kind of a fun project to repurpose this, and I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think? This DIY actually is like a couple DIYs all put together in one segment here, so I hope you guys enjoy this. I have these peat pots. I bought them at like the nursery section of my home improvement store, and they're just filled with a little bit of plaster of Paris mixed with water to give them that stability on the bottom. And it took about 24 hours for these to dry, so keep that in mind. But anything in the bottom of them, some marbles, anything is going to work. You just want some stability. Now we have this beautiful collection of fall napkins here, and so I'm just going to kind of use what feels good to me as I go along with this project. But I'm just showing you that you do want to separate the different layers of the napkins so you're working with a single layer. Now using a paintbrush and some water, I'm just going to use this to cut out these designs. You could use scissors, but I like the natural organic edge that you get from doing it this way, because as you see, when you add a little bit of water there or moisture, it lets you tear the napkin, and it tears so easily. It is delicate, but you still can get a really nice clean edge to it. And by clean, I just mean that it's not going to tear in wonky ways, and you get a natural edge which blends in beautifully with your decoupage. So I'm using some Mod Podge, and I'm just going to put this on the edge of the pot. I love this plaid trim on the bottom of the napkin, and I thought this would look so cute circling the top portion of this pot. So I just put a little bit of Mod Podge down. Now it doesn't matter if you use a satin finish, a matte finish, a glossy finish, and whichever one you've got is going to work. So don't really get hung up too much on that. But you can see I'm just putting a little bit of that Mod Podge down, and then I will go in and place down my napkin here, just pushing gently on this and working in sections, so that way I'm not getting too much Mod Podge, I'm not having it get sticky on the napkin or anything. Take your time when you're doing this and just do what looks good, but make sure you do a nice clean job while you're doing it. After finishing the rim of this pot, I'm going to take these pumpkins, and I really liked this napkin and the different pumpkins on here. So you can see I am just using this brush with some water. Now just note that as you're doing this, that the water is going to have a really big like bleed line. So you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough space to be able to punch your design out or tear your design out without compromising the actual design itself. Now the nice thing about a napkin is you typically have a couple different tries if you mess it up the first time, but you'll get the hang of it pretty quick. And you can see that I'm just punching that out there to have that nice natural edge here. And on this, I put some Mod Podge on the back of it first, so that way I could kind of hold my pot and get it placed on there. And then you'll see how I end up using the Mod Podge on the edges. But I just gently push down with my finger. And this is just so you can get a good bond between the napkin and your pot that you're using. And you just want to be delicate because you are working with napkins. They can tear very easily, but the nice thing is they also go back together very easily, and you don't typically notice if you have a tear or rip, so don't get too overly concerned about that. So I'm just putting a little bit of Mod Podge on the edge. You can see I'll just lift up my edge there, being very careful not to tear this. Get that Mod Podge adhesion underneath it, and then I go over the top, the whole top of the design. So once you can either do this in sections as you place your napkins down, or all over at the end, but you will want to put a nice coat of Mod Podge all over the edge of this, or the outside of this. Now on this bigger pot, I thought I would kind of brighten it up a little bit with a little bit of chalk paint, just with a chip brush here, going over haphazardly, no rhyme or reason to this, just kind of brightening it up, looking like it's aged here. You don't really see too much of it underneath, but enough that it was kind of fun to do this process. So that's up to you, just showing you a different technique there. So now I'm just centering. This is a larger design, which I loved using on this larger pot. But when you get to the bottom here, because it's a little bit too long for the pot, you can see I just run that water along the edge and it tears right off. So that way you can either fold the remainder of it underneath the pot, or you can just have it go right to the edge and have it stop. It's not going to make too much of a difference either way. You'll just want to make sure again that you go in with some Mod Podge and Mod Podge that edge, so you're not going to have it lifting up at all. And then just make sure that you go over the entire design with the Mod Podge. Again, you can do this either in each napkin section that you do, or all over at the end. Whatever you do, just make sure that you do that step. Now I have these cute little tags that I think I picked up. I think these came from Hobby Lobby. You could make your own. You totally skip that step if you want, but I'll show you what I do with those tags. Now I'm just putting some sacks that I had from the craft store down in this pot to give a little bit of volume there. So it's a great way to use those bags if you have them left over, because you want to be able to build up the inside of your pot. And I didn't want to have to waste styrofoam or anything like that. So I just put a liberal amount of hot glue and then some Spanish moss. That's going to give you your base to your pot. And then I have 3 pumpkins for this particular topiary that I'm doing here for my pumpkin stack. All different sizes, going from the largest to the smallest, and you can match different colors, different sizes, different shapes. It's so fun to be able to do DIYs like this. Now in between each layer, I'm going to put a little bit of Spanish moss. I really love the look of Spanish moss with the pumpkins. It kind of gives like that pumpkin vine vibe. I love the color of the Spanish moss. It has a really that brownish look, almost like a fall look that you get. I just really think that it complements the pumpkins really well. Plus it adds a nice layer of texture and a little bit kind
kind of softens the look, if you will. So between each layer, just a little bit. You don't have to go overboard. You can put as little or as much as you like. And then I'm just using some hot glue. You could even go up through these and put a skewer down through them to add another layer to add a little more security if you want. I feel like the glue holds really well. Now I'm using my heat tool there to get rid of any of the little glue webs that you do get from the hot glue sometimes, so that kind of melts those away. So it's kind of a little hack there, if you will. So now I'm just going to trim up the Spanish moss. Sometimes it can look a little shaggy around, and it kind of depends on the look that you're going for. Sometimes you may want a little bit more of a shaggy look. It depends on how much texture and how wild you want it to be. I just thought I needed to trim it up a little bit. So now I'm moving on to my littler pot here, and again just pushing one of these plastic bags down here, tissue paper, some of the paper that they wrap your breakable items in from like the craft store, anything like that, paper towels even, something just to stick to build up the inside of that pot so you can put your base layer of the Spanish moss here. And again, I just use hot glue and I'm just pushing that down, almost making like a little nest for your pumpkins to sit on. Now I'm doing my smaller pumpkin stack with just 2 pumpkins. I thought that 3 looked a little bit big for this particular size of pot, and I like the variation if you're going to stack them together or display them together, that one has 3 and one has 2. I think they complement each other really nicely. So now just putting a very liberal amount of hot glue. I am just going to set that right in the middle of our nest that we made with the Spanish moss and just hold that down until it gets a firm grip there. And then I do go around the edge here. You can see just putting a little bit more hot glue for a little bit of extra security in there. On this one, I do the same thing with the Spanish moss. I just put some hot glue on the top of the pumpkin and place a little bit of that down, just a little bit, just enough to add a little variation between each layer. And then I will take my smaller pumpkin and go ahead and put some hot glue on that. And then I just place that down on top of that Spanish moss and the other pumpkin. And that's all it is to get these to stick together and have a cute little pumpkin stack. Easy peasy. Now these cute little tags, I thought this would be fun. It's kind of like a burlap material and it would be cute just tying it on as is, but I wanted to have it look a little primitive. So I took some antiquing wax on a baby wipe and rubbed it all over. You could also soak it like in coffee or tea. You could even put a little bit, like spray it with some Mod Podge and some cinnamon on there. Any way that you would want to age this would be great. The cinnamon would really smell really good. I've even seen people use like pumpkin pie spice when they've done these to have a little scent go with it, and I'm sure it smells delightful. So now I'm just going to tear a little bit of the edges to have a little bit more of a look of rustic look there. And so I'm just using my weeding tool to kind of pull out each little thread. Again, this is just a matter of taste, what you decide to do or have a tag on there. Anything is going to be great. Even just leaving it as is would be totally fine. But I like to do a little bit extra every once in a while. So now I am just going to put some Mod Podge on here because I wanted to have it creased or kind of wrinkled like it had been sitting around for years, and I thought the Mod Podge would help it dry with a little bit of that crease staying in there, which it does. So I just completely coated the front and the back, and then I just kind of put it in the position I wanted and let it dry. You could even use some of the little Dollar Tree clamps to kind of help keep it in a creased position. Now I'm just putting a little bit of twine back on here, and I'm going to tie this onto my pumpkins, and I went just one pumpkin layer down to tie that so that way it would hang really nicely on the side of that. Now how you do this next part is totally up to your taste and your preference. You could tie this off and cut all the little strings so you didn't see those hanging down at all. I chose to leave the tails long and make a finger bow by wrapping some twine around my finger several times, maybe 8 to 10 times, and then just tying that in the middle with another piece of twine to make a nice sized finger bow there. And I glued that on right where those tails were, and then just trim them up so they're not really too long. So that's just a matter of personal preference there. And then look at how cute these pots. I thought I would just show you up close this cute little pot, how all that decoupage and the napkins turned out. I just think it turned out so cute. Now on this one for the tag, I felt like it needed to stick up a little bit more, so I put a little glue underneath it so that way I could kind of control how it fell on the pumpkin stack, so that way it would pop up a little bit more. I feel like this project was a little lengthy, but I think these turned out absolutely beautiful. It was worth it. I just love a good pumpkin stack, and I feel like having that custom pot that I did with the napkin and the decoupage on those, I just think that really sets these apart. And how fun are those? Now, if you didn't have pumpkins to do in a stack, you could easily do even just one pumpkin on these pots or anything else. I just think having those cute pots gives you such a good base to start with. What do you guys think of these? Let me know down in the comments.
I always have a bunch of fall florals left over, or little scraps or pieces, and so I wanted to come up with a way to kind of use all of those that you might have. You could even just buy a sprig of flowers or pick of flowers at Dollar Tree and do the same thing with it. You could even find some beautiful fall leaves and dry them and do them with ones you may already have in your yard for free. I'm just starting with one of these blocks from Dollar Tree that has kind of the three little almost looks like shiplap, so we're going to go with that, like these little shiplap blocks, I guess. And I'm just taking some fabric that I have. I've used this fabric for several different projects, for Easter and Christmas, and now I'm using it for fall. And so it's just kind of perfect to use some of those scraps you may have. I'm just going to make sure that my little square of fabric has a raw edge on all of the edges, because I wanted it to look very farmhouse, country, frayed, like maybe this had just been around for a really long time. And so that's the look I was going for. If you want to seam the edges and sew them so it's nice and crisp, you could do that as well. And then I'm just using this little mini press right here. This is one of those purchases that I thought, would I really use this that much? And you guys, I use this all the time. I mean, it's plugged in constantly while I'm doing projects because I always reach and use it. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm just using hot glue to get this little square of fabric on here. I'm just going to make a cute little pocket here to tuck some florals down into. So I just want to glue the sides and the bottom edge because I want to leave that top as an open pocket so we can slip some things in there. Now, I thought it would be fun here to fold this down and kind of have it have a little more of a casual look here. So I'm just going to glue it with that in mind, so I don't take the glue on the edges all the way to the top, so that way I can fold it down. And then I'm just using my little mini press here to crease that, and so that's going to stay down. You can put a little touch of glue up underneath the sides to help it stay folded down if you would like as well. I did add a little bit of trim. This helps to kind of mask the glue lines because sometimes you can see the glue seeping through the fabric a little bit there. I'm not sure if using a different type of glue, maybe even some wood glue or something, would eliminate that, but I had this cute little burlap ribbon that I put for a little edge all around there, which I felt looked really cute and kind of give it a little bit more of a casual farmhouse look here. So just hot gluing that up underneath the seam there so it looks like it's part of it. This honestly reminded me a little bit, if you had the mason jars from Dollar Tree, those little mason jar cutouts, that this would be a really cute project to do with those as well, with those shapes. Now this is just a little harvest sign. It came in a bundle of like 4 or 5 that I purchased at the craft store last year. So it was just kind of left over. So this would be completely optional, but a lot of, like, if you're looking for something else to kind of bring in, if you don't have something like this, is they do a lot of the wood laser cutouts at Dollar Tree, or even like the metal wording or the wood cutout wording. Something like that would be really cute on the front of this as well. But just leaving it plain would be something you could do that would also be extremely beautiful, I think, and a little bit more simple. I did put a little teeny twine bow up there, like this tag had been tied onto the fabric there, so that was just a little addition that I added on there.
But now for the fun part of putting some of these little florals I have. Now, here's a little hack for you, and I've taught you guys this before, but if you are new to my channel or haven't seen this before, when you buy florals at Dollar Tree, some of them are really crinkled and bent, and if you just blast them for just a couple of seconds with your heat tool, it flattens them right out like they were brand new. So it's a great hack to use, and a lot of times you can find a lot of the really like creased florals at Dollar Tree because they're the ones that nobody wants, and now you know how to fix it. So I'm just taking a bunch of the scraps that I have here and just sticking like a little piece here and there. I maybe go a little overboard. You'll have to let me know what you think on that, but you can do it as simple or as much as you want. But like I had mentioned in the beginning, I think even some beautiful fall leaves from your yard or maybe a walk or hike that you go on would also be extremely beautiful in there. But this is just kind of a fun way to bring some fall florals into your decor or your shelf or your tiered tray, wherever you're going to set this. And I just think it looks really beautiful and very farmhouse. I am so excited with how this DIY turns out, and it's kind of questionable through the process. It was one of those I had to trust the process, and the end product is beautiful. So stay with me on this. This is just using some of those styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree and a little bit of spackling, and I added a little bit of water to my spackling so it was a little bit more the consistency of like cake frosting, but you're going to have some texture in there with some little pieces of the spackling that kind of makes it look like the warty pumpkins that you've seen. So that's totally fine if your spackling is not smooth. In fact, you don't want it smooth. You want it to have more of that texture. But I'm just kind of spreading it over the pumpkin like frosting. I end up putting on some gloves because it does get a little messy. And I'm just covering all of the areas, trying to make sure that I don't need full coverage here to cover the orange. I just need coverage where it matches texture. So if I miss like a spot on the styrofoam, you're going to notice. So I just want to make sure that all of the styrofoam has a little bit of the spackling over it so the texture matches. You can kind of just see how I'm going all over like this. It's definitely messy, so just be aware of that. Now this pumpkin right here, this is completely dried, 24 hours, the spackling. I even took it outside and set it on my trampoline so I could make sure that the sun kind of really dried it well. And I'm covering it completely with some elephant chalk paint. I want this to kind of have almost like a concrete look. Now this particular one right here is another one that I had done, and I'm also painting it. So I've done two separate styrofoam pumpkins, same process, and I am painting my second one now with the same elephant chalk paint. So I'm just showing you here that I have two different ones, and I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a different technique on both of them. Either way, you just want to make sure that your spackling has completely dried, and then also let your paint dry before you move on to the next step. So on this one, I'm taking some more plaster and I'm going to spread this over my pumpkin. I know that I wanted a two-tone look with the white and the gray, and so I wanted to test out two different methods here, and I honestly don't have a preference over which one I like the best. I will say that this one has a more sturdy feel once it's done, but not enough that you would notice between the two and think that it was better than the other. So whichever method you feel like you would like to try, follow that, because they both turn out beautifully, but just slightly different. So I'm just covering this. I just wanted to be able to see a little bit of that gray peeking through. Again, kind of like a concrete feel. Now on this next one, I decided instead of doing another layer of the plaster, I wanted to just do paint and see if it works the same, because I thought, well, maybe this would be a little bit easier, and this method is a little bit easier, less messy. So it just kind of, again, depends on which one you think suits your type of DIY that you want to try. So I'm just going over with white paint. This would be fun to try with some different colors, I think. But honestly, at this point, I'm going, these just look, I just was not sure about how this was going. But I always say trust the process, and I did. And oh my gosh, I just love these. Especially if you're a crafter who likes to sell things for different boutiques or craft fairs, shows that you do. You could definitely do these. You'll have to do like kind of
batch them and do the spackling on a bunch, let that dry for a day, and then move on to the next step. So it is something that'll take you a little bit of time, but you could easily do several of these, and I think that you could have a really good return for how much you've paid to make these. I think you could charge a very decent amount for these. So now I'm just moving on to the next step here, just touching up any area that I want to make sure that there's paint on. I will say that if you don't let these completely dry and you're painting them like this, what will happen is it will start to peel back. So if you notice that, just stop, let it dry some more, and then move on to the next step. I was even using my heat tool. You can kind of see at the bottom where some of that was lifting up because the bottom where it had set down hadn't dried completely. Really easy to fix though. Again, I just dried it and then just covered it with paint, and you cannot even tell. The fun part about these pumpkins is the texture that you're creating, and you really want to define that texture, almost like it's like this modern organic feel to these pumpkins. And so I just really, really wanted that warty texture we've created to really pop. So I felt like there was a little too much white. So I'm just taking my elephant chalk paint brush that has just a little bit. So I'm almost like dry brushing over the top of these. And that texture is so thick and so rich, it just picks up all of that little bit that's left in the brush and really defines that. Now on the flip side of that, if you feel like you have too much white, you can go back in, too much gray, you can go back in with your white brush and do the same technique. In fact, you can go back and forth until you get your desired look. Just make sure you let it dry in between each time, so that way you're not smearing the paint. You're getting that true definition between the two. But I just absolutely love how this texture looks. You can see here between the two how that gray pops on that one on the right. So I just decided to do the same thing with this other one and make sure that all of that texture pops with the gray on this one. So I just do that same thing, dry brushing over this one. After you've got your desired texture on there and the colors and everything and it's completely dry, I'm going to go in here, and this is where you can have so much fun making this look like a pumpkin and adding whatever details you would like. I really wanted to go for a very, very neutral feel with these. So these are just a couple of sticks from my yard or my farm that I have that I love to use for pumpkin stems this time of year. And since these are those styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree, you can just push those in. They will go right into the top, and then a little bit of hot glue holds them in place. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of Spanish moss over the top. That's just going to add a little bit of softness and texture. And again, you guys know that I love to use Spanish moss in fall DIYs, especially with pumpkins, because I feel like it does look like it just goes. It feels like it's the curly, cute little vines that you get with your pumpkins. It's a good color for fall, and especially where I'm trying to stick with the neutral tones here, it's really good. So you can see with this one here, I'm just a little bit of glue. I kind of put my little stick askew so it's not quite straight up. It's kind of off to the side. You can have so much fun doing all of these details with these pumpkins here. And then I'm just going to place the Spanish moss here and kind of push that stem where I want it situated off to the side there, and just kind of let that dry. I'm taking a little bit of barn wire. This is just fencing wire. You can use whatever kind of wire that you would like, or you can even skip using the wire and do, as you'll see me in a moment, use a little bit of pitberry on them or something. I just felt like this wire really kind of brought that modern farmhouse touch into it. Looks like the little tendril curlicue vines that you get on the pumpkins naturally, and it just adds another element into it. And all I do is I just kind of bend it almost into like a U shape with the both ends of the wire. I'm just sticking that into the styrofoam, going around my stem a little bit and sticking the other end right down into the styrofoam. And so that way you're not having any sharp edges exposed or anything like that. You can touch those with some glue if you want to have them stay a little bit more permanent on there. But honestly, if you stick them down in far enough, they're not going to be coming out unless you were to like pull on them. Now on this second one over here, this is where I started to do some of the pitberry. I have some white If you wanted to bring a color in, you could, but I just really, again, wanted these to be very neutral, looking. And so I'm just going to curl these around just a little paintbrush here to get the curlicue vines on those. I'll snip it off there. And then I do the exact same thing. I just stick that wire, since these are on a wire, down into the styrofoam and just kind of curl that around the stem, and I'll stick the other end back down into that styrofoam. I just love how these are looking. You'll have to let me know what you think of these. These were so fun to create, and I really just wanted just a fun, something a little bit different. I don't know. I'm so excited to put these in my decor. I just think they're so fun. In fact, I liked the pitberry on the one so much, I decided to kind of do another little bit to put on the other one, because I really thought they looked cute with that. And then in that same vein, I take a little bit of the fencing wire that I have and put a little bit of that onto the other pumpkin, so that way they're almost identical in the way that I did each of them. So if you're batch doing these, you're wanting to sell these, make it as easy as possible, make them all look the same, or you could even do a little bit different, something to speak to different buyers, different colors. But I just really think these turn out so cute. I am so pleased with how these turned out. They are exactly what I wanted them to be. You would never know that these were the Dollar Tree styrofoam pumpkins underneath here. Just look at that beautiful texture that you get on these, and just think of all the different possibilities you could do with different tones or colors that you wanted to play around with. I just think this is just such a fun, different way, different treatment to do for these pumpkins, and I just think they turn out beautiful. Very classy and high-end, in my opinion. I just think they're going to be so fun to have in my fall decor. I would love to know what you guys think of these. This is one of those projects that I really didn't know the direction it was going to take. I just kind of went with it as I was going along. But I did want to use one of these little grapevine wreaths. Now this is a 2-pack, and you can use any size, but you can also see down there I have some different, like that little snake from Dollar Tree would be really cute to do this with if you don't happen to have one of these grapevine wreaths. Now I was very carefully taking off the extra grapevine they used to wrap these together so I can use them in another project, or use them like as pumpkin vines or something. I just thought that they were really cute. And I always just hang on to stuff like that in a little bag that I can always use for different embellishments. Now I took this pressed tin, it's faux pressed tin from Dollar Tree, and I love this stuff. And I just kind of cut it into the same shape as the wreath there, because I'm going to be gluing the wreath on the top of it. I'm going to make a cute little pumpkin out of this, and so I just wanted to make sure that you couldn't see that from behind around the edge, just only in the center of the wreath. Now I'm going to paint this with some pumpkin Waverly chalk paint. I takes like 2 or 3 coats. I believe I did 3 on here, and I did a coat or 2 on the back. Just if you were to see it from the back, you would see the orange color rather than the stark white. So that's up to you if you paint the back of your projects. It's kind of a matter of personal preference, or if you're going to sell them, it always makes them look a little bit more high-end. So I'm just showing you here because every once in a while you have someone say, you never paint the back of your projects. I'm just showing you that sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but today I did. So now I'm taking some white paint on one of these little chip brushes from Dollar Tree from their craft section. And I'm very lightly, so I wiped it off on my paper there. You don't want a whole bunch on your brush because you just want to go over that raised surface of this design to make it really pop. So that's what gives it a look of authenticity. You can really see like that tin, like it's been a piece of tin that you have aged or that has been around a long time, and then you have come back and repurposed it with a craft. So it's kind of fun to see the magic happen with that. Now I'm using some Beacon's glue here instead of some hot glue. Hot glue would work just fine. I just didn't really want to melt the tin. It's not really tin. I keep calling it tin, but you guys know what I mean. This faux tin. I didn't want the hot glue to melt it, so I thought I would give this glue a try. So I will just place this down on here and hold it. You can even use some of those little clamps from Dollar Tree, which ultimately is what I did, just to let that glue set a little bit. Or you could just set it like this, walk away for a couple of minutes and let that completely dry. So I'm just showing you the kind of glue that I used here. So if you want to take a screenshot here of that, you can. Just pick it up at any craft store on Amazon.
It works really well for doing projects like this. So now I'm just using it to glue on, and hot glue would work for this too, but I'm just using it on this little stem. This was just a stick that I found down at our farm when I was collecting sticks for all sorts of projects. So I just have a little baggie of those, just picked one out. So just head out into your yard, see what you've got, use for a cute little stem. But it looks cute like this, but I really feel that we need to soften that look between the wreath and the stem. So I'm using some Spanish moss. I'll just put a little bit of glue on there. I just use hot glue around the edge of this to put that on, so that way it kind of softens that look. Now I'm just taking some pipberry and wrapping it around a pencil to get a corkscrew shape to it. I love using pipberry. You guys know, if you see me do pumpkins, I feel like I use this all the time in the pumpkins because it looks so cute, and it really does bring that element of the pumpkin vines into it, that you get kind of that curly shape of the vines there. So it's really fun to add that in. So I typically always put it on my pumpkins just because I feel like it really adds that different element of cuteness to it. So again, totally optional. I just use some of this Beacon's glue down sitting in my Spanish moss, and then I just press this in and hold it until it sets. Doesn't take long for that glue to take hold of that, so it dries pretty quick on there. And then you can kind of bend your corkscrews in whatever shape or how long or short you want them. You can kind of pull out to be a little less curly if you want. And then I'm using some lamb's ear. I really do love the lamb's ear look with the pumpkins, that orange color, because I feel like that gray green color and the orange really complement each other well. I do want to point out that I know this is not what pumpkin leaves look like, but I do just like the colors together. So use what you've got in your stash. Use some leaves from Dollar Tree, some fall leaves. Leave the leaves off. Make it your own. It's going to be cute no matter what you do to it. I did just add a little touch more of the Spanish moss at the base of those leaves, so it kind of hides those little stems there and adds a little bit of a layered look to it, which I think were really cute. But overall, I'm loving how this pumpkin turned out. I'm just showing you what the back looks like from there. You could put a little hanger on there if you wanted, so that way you could hang it somewhere. But as a little shelf sitter, I think this turns out darling. You're gonna have to let me know what you guys think of this. Do you like the projects using this press tin from Dollar Tree? Are you guys able to find it at your Dollar Tree? I feel like mine has really had a lot of it in stock lately, and I just love the element that it gives, that texture, and it's so fun to paint and have this two-tone look to it. What do you guys think of this project? Let me know down in the comments. For this project, you just need a couple of cubes that are similar in size but stagger a little bit. These are just from Dollar Tree. There's just one of their main cubes on the left there from like the craft section, and then this is just another decorative cube that has some sayings all over the different sides of it. But I'm just going to paint these each with the pumpkin Waverly chalk paint just to get a really good, it takes a couple of coats on this one I'm doing now to cover all of those words. So whether or not you maybe do a coat of white over the top to start with might help kind of alleviate using so much orange. Some spray paint would work really well too. But anyway, you're just going to cover both of these with orange chalk paint. It's not rocket science, it's pumpkins. So I'm just taking a little bit of antiquing wax and going around the edge. I really kind of was thinking of a primitive type of look with these, and so I really wanted to age all of the little lines on them, all of the corners and everything. And then I'm just going to stack these with a little bit of hot glue, so that way it's just a cute little pumpkin stack. Now for the top, I just pulled out of one of the styrofoam pumpkins that I have used for another DIY in a pumpkin stack. I have like a little baggie of different stems, and it's kind of a fun thing that if you ever have a pumpkin that you don't like the stem on, change it out with another stem that you like or you have. I know that sounds maybe it sounds silly, I don't know, but I have a bag of just a bunch of different stems that I've taken out of pumpkins, and whenever I'm working with some things or need a stem, it's kind of fun just to look through there and see if you have one that you'll like, or for little projects like this. So I'm just putting a little bit of Spanish moss down. For some reason, I just love the look of using the Spanish moss with the pumpkins. I think it just brings home a really nice, cozy fall look. So if you don't love working with Spanish moss, you could easily just leave that off. But I just thought it was really cute. I just glued that little stem on the top there. And then I felt like it needed a little embellishment on the front here. So there's a lot of different ways or directions that you could take this. But I just put a little bit of Spanish moss, and then I just have some little cutouts. This
bigger leaf is from the Dollar Tree. The smaller leaves are in a set. I believe I got it at Hobby Lobby. However, I've seen them at Dollar Tree too. So just kind of keep your eye open this time of year. They start to come out with a lot of fun fall stuff. And I just buy the little sets, and then it's just, you have it for lots of different projects. I think this little set of leaves, this is like the 3rd year that I've had it. But I'm just going to glue that little bit of Spanish moss on the front there, and then just kind of stack those little leaves. It'd be cute to put like a little crow or a little sunflower or something. I mean, I'm just kind of working with what I already had, but I think this turns out so cute. It's going to be such a fun little shelf sitter or for a tiered tray. I just think that it has a very primitive look to me. You'll have to let me know what you think. If you think this looks like pumpkins. I know sometimes people are like, they're square, it does not look like pumpkins, but I think it does, and I think it turned out cute. So let me know what you think down in the comments. A few videos back, I did a thrift flipping with my family video, and while my family was picking out some DIYs, I found these 2 beautiful Bundt pans, and I knew I wanted to grab them to make some pumpkins out of, so I've been holding on to them for a couple of months. Now this little copper one right here, it does have a little hanger on it like it was made for wall decor, so I don't think it was ever used to cook anything in, but this Bundt pan is heavy duty, it's beautiful, but I just loved the color, and if you saw the price on there, I only paid $1 for it. So both of these I paid $1 for. Great bargain, great deal, and they're going to make some beautiful pumpkins. To start with, I'm just taking some floral foam. You could use some styrofoam, just something to fill in the gap in the middle of this Bundt pan so we can fill it with a stem and some florals to kind of bring in that nice fall feel. I've seen a lot of these through Pinterest and my Instagram feed that people have done, and there's so many different ways to make these look like pumpkins. So I'm just kind of taking my spin on it today. I hope you guys enjoy this one. This is just a finial that I had. It's from Hobby Lobby, but any type of finial or even just a stick from your yard that you could cut down to make it look like the stem of a pumpkin would work great. So no need to get too fancy with that. I just painted mine green, and now I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue down on this floral foam, and I'm just putting some Spanish moss here. This is just going to help fill in all of the gaps here, give my florals something else to stick to besides that floral foam. And it's also just going to bring home that nice fall color. I love using Spanish moss in my fall DIYs. Now, first of all, I'm just going to dry fit. I just grabbed a bunch of my fall foliage, like fall florals rather, that I have here, and leaving some little succulents there. And I just brought them all out. And I'm just playing around just until I can kind of see if I like the way something looks or I don't. And this way, before I glue everything in place to be more of a permanent hold, I know if I like it. Now, one thing you could do is if this is a pan that you're not wanting to use any hot glue on or anything, you could skip the step of the hot glue and just dry fit everything in here and use your pan. Even if you did use a little bit of hot glue, you can still get that off of the pan. But this way, if you're not wanting to totally ruin a pan, you're just wanting it for decorational purposes, but then have it be functional, that's one thing to remember as well. So you could just totally dry fit all of your florals here and just leave it. I do end up gluing mine just so I could show you the process that I go through. Now with my leaves right here, this is a wonderful tip if you get some silk flowers or leaves that are very crumpled, especially from Dollar Tree. You guys know how some of those picks can look. Just blast them flat on a table with your little heat tool that blows the hot air there. That's just going to help flatten those out, and you can see how they went from very wrinkly to very flat. It's a great hack, and it works wonderful this time of year because I feel like all of the fall leaves that come into Dollar Tree especially look so crumpled and gross, and you just are tempted to not buy them, but never fear, this trick works wonders. I love using a little bit of pipberry here. You can see off to the right, that was just kind of a pick that I got at Hobby Lobby that had all of these little orange pipberries there that you can kind of make look like little corkscrews, like the little pumpkin vines or tendrils that come off of those pumpkins. And so I love using those. Now my stem was a little too green for the vibe that I was wanting to go for, so I'm just covering it with some antiquing wax. Once I get this completely covered, I'll take just a baby wipe or a wet paper towel and kind of just wipe, not kind of, but just wipe the excess off. And it's just going to leave you with a nice aged look there, more antique. You can kind of see how that will stay in all of the grooves on this little piece of this finial here. And I really do like the aged look that brings, and it kind of was more the vibe I was going for. Now that I've set everything in, I've dry fitted it to where I want it, I'm going to kind of take it out the best I can, almost like a clock. That's how it made sense in my mind anyway. I'm just taking all of these pieces out, placing them kind of where I had them set in my foam, and that way when I go back in to glue everything, I have it kind of in the area that I want it. Doesn't look exactly the same, but I'm very pleased with how it turns out. I'm using a lot of hot glue to make sure that this stem doesn't go anywhere. It's not strong enough that you're going to want to pick this up by the stem by any means, but I definitely want that stem staying in place, not getting knocked over or anything like that. And the glue is going directly onto the foam. It's not going anywhere on my Bundt pan. Now I just kind of work in the same order, going with a little bit of hot glue on the ends. I think if I had one of those crocks that you're able to kind of dip your stem in with the hot glue. I've never had one of those, but this was one of those projects that I thought that might be worth having. If you have one of those with the little hot glue beads that you put in, this would be a perfect project to pull that out for and do this with. But you could also use any kind of glue that you like to use, crafting glue. Hot glue is just what my go-to, and so that's what I was using here, just a little bit on the stems, and then I go around and just stick each of them in, trying to get them as close to where I had them before, but just whatever feels good, because once they're glued in, you can still kind of have a little bit of wiggle room to manipulate them how you want, but they're gonna be pretty secure once you glue them in. When I found this Bundt pan, I was so excited with the color because it was already this beautiful harvest gold fall color. And I thought it would be so fun to do this with the pumpkin, but then this copper one I thought matched so well with it, so I thought they would be really cute together. I wanted to go for a more neutral look with this copper one, so this is just a peg from like a shaker shelf, and I'm just staining it with a little bit of antiquing wax to kind of make it look a little more aged. And then just a little bit of hot glue. It fit perfectly down, and there was this little indentation there, and it fit perfectly in there. And we're going to glue some stuff around it. I did not put any Spanish moss on this because I didn't really feel like it needed it. But with whatever florals you're deciding to do, some Spanish moss is a great filler to use. I just had these this was a package of the little cotton pods from Dollar Tree. There was 4 of them in there. I end up using 3. And then in between each of the cotton pieces here, you can see this is just a little bit of scrap leaf off of just one of those picks that I have off to the side there. I'll blast it with my heat tool to flatten it out, and you can see how flat that makes it. And then I just put a little bit of glue, and I'm going to just tuck one of these little leaves in between each of the cotton pieces of cotton. Are they cotton pods? Is that somebody told me in one of my videos what they were called, and now I cannot remember for the life of me. But I'm just going to stick some of those leaves in between all of those little pieces of cotton. Where this particular pan did not have a hole or recessed area, I wasn't too worried about actually gluing my piece directly, like the little florals, directly onto the pan, since I don't really feel like this particular pot or pan was worth anything. The Bundt pan might have a little bit of historical value. I just wanted to kind of be as careful as I could not to have the glue touch that one. This one I feel is just more strictly decorational anyway, and so I didn't have a problem gluing things directly to it. Now these are just some pip berries on this. I thought it was fun to kind of bring that harvest color of pip berry in on this particular one to tie it in to our harvest gold Bundt pan that I've used. So I just thought it was kind of a fun way to bring the fall colors, but you could stay completely neutral, do some white pip berry, or skip this step altogether. I love wrapping it around like a pencil or a paintbrush as I'm doing here to give it that nice corkscrew look. I just really do think that kind of ties in the pumpkin vines and how they get all of those little corkscrews and curlicues everywhere. I thought that was a really fun touch. I think these turn out so pretty. How fun are these going to be to have for kitchen decor for fall? And where these are such like a neutral fall, you can put them up at the beginning of the season and leave them all throughout Thanksgiving or however long you leave your fall decor up. I think they're beautiful. I love this trend. You can search grandma's cabinet. Maybe you've even got a really fun Bundt pan. Check your thrift stores. Even if you don't find them in this color that I did, I've seen them done with all different colors and I think they all turn out beautifully. What do you guys think of these? I am always a huge fan of pumpkin topiaries. I have made several on my channel. I have purchased several. For some reason, I'm always just drawn to them. I love the different colors. And I thought I would make one for a tiered tray. This is the most like mini of sizes I've ever made on my channel, and I absolutely adore it. Now this is just a little teeny terracotta pot. You can get these at Dollar Tree. I happened to grab a basket of these at a thrift store that I visited recently, and there was like several in there that I got for like $1 for all of them, which was an insane deal, but they are just the ones that you can pick up at Dollar Tree. You might even have some kicking around your house or use something else for a pot, like even like the little buckets from the wedding section would work as well. So I'm just taking some white wax on this. I want to age this terracotta a little bit here. So I'm just going to paint this all over. The terracotta is so porous that this wax is kind of going to really like get sucked into that dryness of the terracotta. So when you wipe it off, it just has a naturally aged look. Like it's kind of, if you notice, terracotta kind of gets white as it ages. And so I just really kind of love the look there. You can even see around the crease at the top of the pot there that it leaves some. You can wipe this back as much or as little as you want, or completely skip this step if you don't have the wax or you don't want to take the time to do this. It's going to look fine either way. I just thought it was kind of a fun technique to do. So I'm just sticking a little bit of floral foam or styrofoam in there so I can elevate the inside of that, so I can glue some Spanish moss around the edge. So I'm just taking my glue gun and just gently go with a little bit of glue around the inside of that, because I don't want a whole lot of the Spanish moss here because I'm trying to get the contact between the pumpkin and the styrofoam. So just a little that's going to stick out underneath your pumpkin. I really do love the look of Spanish moss with your pumpkin topiaries and with pumpkins this time of year. I think it really kind of brings a good fall vibe into your DIY, and I just love the softness that it creates. Now these are just a couple of leftover pumpkins I have. You can get these packages at Dollar Tree. I've used them for some other projects, but I'm just taking one of the green and one of the white ones. And then this other little orange one is just off of another pick that I had from Dollar Tree. It's just one of the leftover pumpkins I had. So check your stash. If you're a regular crafter for fall, you might have 3 similarly sized pumpkins. It's always fun to kind of stagger the sizes down from big to small. However, the green one and the white one that I'm using are the same size, but I think it still looks okay when it's done. But you might have something in your stash already like this. If not, Dollar Tree is a great place to go look, especially the earlier in the season you are, the more chance you're going to have of finding the different types of pumpkins they have. That's a great place to stock up on them. Between each layer, I just put a little bit of Spanish moss so it kind of comes out. It just, again, adds a little bit of detail. It doesn't look just like 3 straight pumpkins glued on top of one another. It just adds that different element of beauty to it that kind of takes your DIY to the next level. I really like the way it looks, but if it's not your jam or you have a different idea of something to put in there, go with that. I even take the little teeny stem out of the top of this little teeny pumpkin and put just a little bit more Spanish moss in there. I'm just putting a little bit of glue so I can stick that to it, and then I will just glue the stem right back on top of the Spanish moss. I just adore this little topiary. I think it is so cute. It's about 5 inches tall, maybe. It's just teeny, and it's perfect for a tiered tray if you're looking for something fun to kind of put together for that, or just on a shelf somewhere in your home. I just think it turned out really cute, and I think it's going to be so fun to have for fall and super quick project. What do you guys think of this one?
I'm really excited about this project because I've been wanting to do it for a while now, and I've just kind of been thinking in my head what the easiest way to possibly do this would be. Now you can see my bag of beads here. This is an old Christmas tree garland that we had. Literally, we had this on my tree growing up, that my mom updated her tree and handed me the garland. And so I took all of these beads. They kind of have a glossy finish to them, but they're perfect to paint over. But you could easily use something like this from Dollar Tree, or some of their beads, or anything you can find. But I just take them and I'm putting them on these little like barbecue skewers, because this is how I'm going to paint them. So use whatever colors of paint you want. I use like a Merlot color, a pumpkin orange, like a corn yellow, and then just some antiquing wax. So those are the 4 colors that I ended up using, but it makes really quick work of going ahead and painting these on these skewers. And then you could see I even just use my heat tool to help dry those. So this is just some wire. It's fencing wire that my husband uses on the farm. So I just kind of steal a roll of it at a time when I feel like I need it for a project. And I end up using 3 pieces of it here. And I kind of wrap these around each other. And I mean, I didn't really know like a super great way to do this, but it ends up working pretty good. I just used some pliers there to kind of clamp it down, so that way they weren't really like, they were kind of fixed together. And then, not paying attention to what color I was grabbing at all, I just went ahead and randomly picked beads to thread onto each of these 6 now you have 6 strands that you can put beads onto. So I just randomly picked colors and put them on there without even looking. In fact, I was talking to my little boy, not even paying attention. So that way you truly do get a random color. And then when you finish, I just bent the little end of that wire up, so that way your beads don't come falling off of there. And I just go around the entire thing here and do the same thing. Takes you really no time at all to thread all of those on. Now I am just taking them all and picking them all up here by the little bit of wire that's left at the top. You can kind of see some of my beads are falling off of there. It's all right, because I think I end up taking some off actually at the end here, because I didn't have enough wire here. So I feel like no matter what you do, like you're going to end up with enough beads. If you fill 4 barbecue skewers of beads there, you're going to totally have enough, even some left over. So you can see here, I think this is where I end up taking some off, because I just want to make sure that I have enough wire to wrap together. And again, I got to this point and I didn't really know if you can think of a better way to do this, then go with that. But I just had one of the wires that was a little bit taller than all the rest, and so I took the most beads off of that one, and then I just started to wrap it around the other one. So you'll see kind of how I do that here. To make sure it was tight and I was getting it wrapped as tight as I could, I reached for, you can see I grabbed some pliers here and just grab onto that wire and help use that to go around the rest of them to make sure that it's clamping as close as it can. You just want to make sure that it comes to a point at the top with your wires, and that it's not going to, your beads aren't going to fall off or anything there. And if you need to trim any of your beads or anything like that, or sand them so you don't have any sharp edges, I mean, definitely do that. You just want to make sure that, again, your beads aren't going to be coming off of there, and like the natural shape of the corn on the cob, how it comes to a point, that's what I was going for. At this point, I was super excited with how it was looking. I mean, it looks like a real little ear of corn there. I just thought it was so cute. So you could easily leave it like this. You could even take some raffia to tie on the top of it or the end of it or something like that. I guess you'd want to tie it on the end of it. That would be a super easy way. I happen to have, this is faux, like I wanted to call it corn silk, but it's not corn silk, like corn husk, I guess. So this is just, it's kind of like, it looks like real, it feels like real, but honestly when you look at it you can tell it's like a fabric that they've coated with something. But I know I've seen it at the craft stores and even at Walmart, actual corn husks you could get that you could use. So just keep that in mind. But I'm just cutting some of these pieces down and then I'm gluing them together because I want them to go kind of on either side. So I'm just taking the pieces and kind of shaping it how I wanted it shaped to be able to go on my ear of corn. You can see that I'll take it and I kind of match it up with my corn. I mean, look at how, isn't this coming together so cute? I just think this is so fun. So I kind of decided that I wanted a little bit more than just that one there. And so I have to glue each of these together here. So just using hot glue to do that. And I just kind of play around and have a little bit of fun with it and just kind of go for what feels good, I guess. And you can see here, I have another little piece that I've got built up. And so these are going to go on the back of my corn. I'll show you here in just a second how I put all of these together with the ear of corn. Now that I've got a couple of these sections built up the way that I want them, I am just going to glue them together to make one big kind of fan almost. And they have wire at the bottom, so I'm just kind of bending them so that way I can get a really good bond between the two of them. And then I'll put a little bit of glue down on them, and by a little bit, I actually put quite a bit here because I wanted to make sure this stuck really well. And you just want to make sure that where you're putting the glue, you're just going to face your beads so that way they stick to that glue, so you can get a really good bond between them, and so this isn't going to come off. But I mean, just looking at this, you guys, I mean, this turns out so darling. I mean, I can't be more pleased with how this turned out. It was kind of one of those projects that I really didn't know what I was doing going into it. But hey, I think it turns out so fun. So there's just a couple of other little pieces here that were left over, and I went ahead and just glued a couple more onto the side just to make it more full. I think that whatever you have to go with, and even if you wanted to skip this step completely, your corn's still going to look really, really cute. There was a couple little extra pieces that were really small and teeny, and so I just rounded off the bottom of them with my scissors, and I'm just going to glue them coming up the bottom of the corn, and that's going to give a nice finished look to the base of the corn. And then I'll take some glue and glue each of those little teeny curlied ones. I mean, that's what they are. They kind of have this curly ends to them. And so I just kind of fold this over. Looks like it has legs right there, doesn't it? But I just put a little dab of glue on each of these and just carefully push them up into the beads. So that way it looks like you've got a little bit more of that husk coming in the front. For kind of piecing this together as I went along and not really knowing what I was doing, I think it turned out really cute. I would be so excited to know if any of you guys tried this or came up with any other hacks to doing it. I think this looks absolutely beautiful, and you really could leave this up all the way through Thanksgiving. I mean, how pretty would this look in a tablescape at Thanksgiving, your Thanksgiving table? What do you guys think of this one? If you guys are anything like me, when you see these packages of these 3 twine rolls at Dollar Tree, I seem to always pick them up a couple at a time. I think they're found over close in the automotive section at my Dollar Tree, but anyhow, I have several packages of them. So I thought it would be fun to kind of take them and make a unique spin on a pumpkin here. So I just take 5 of the rolls. You'll have 6 in 2 packages, but you'll just leave 1 to use for crafting projects. I take 5 of them, and I'm just trying to see what I want to use for my pumpkin stem. I originally thought a spindle would be really cute, and if I had a thicker wood spindle, I think that's what I probably would use. Instead I end up using a little finial that works really cute. I'll show you what that looks like. But anyhow, be creative what you use for your stem. You could even use a stem off of another pumpkin you might have taken off for a different project. I take some thicker twine. I get this twine at Walmart. It's quite thick, not quite like rope, but thicker than just crafting twine, your normal crafting twine. I wrap it around about 3 times and then just tie it off in a little bow. If you don't want the bow, just tie it in a knot and cut off all of the little ends and everything, so that way you don't have the bow there. It would also be fun to embellish this in so many different ways. The creative possibilities are completely endless here with this project. So now I want this little stem here. This is just a finial. This is what I end up using. They come in a package of 3 or 4 of them at Hobby Lobby in their woodpile section. You could also use any type of finial that you could find. Again, be creative with this part. And I did stain it with some antiquing wax to kind of tone down that natural wood color. You could paint it green. You can really do whatever you would like to. This project is so versatile. Now I just had to stuff a little something down in the middle of the pumpkin there to have a surface to glue my finial to. So you could use, depending on how thick your item you're using for your stem is, you may not need to do that. But I just stuffed some, I think it was just like paper that I stuffed down there. I can't recall exactly, but I think it was just some of that paper that they wrap your stuff in at Dollar Tree. I just stuffed that down in there. You can't see it. If you were worried about it, you could definitely put some Spanish moss at the bottom of it to cover it, but you can't see it from the bottom. So just kind of use your best judgment with that. I then take some hot glue and put that down into the center, and I'm just going to hold that finial to make sure that it stands up straight. I just think this turns out so cute. It was so fun to come up with the different ways to embellish it and everything. So I just make sure that that stem is really good and dry there with that hot glue. And then I go around the edge because I want to add a little bit of Spanish moss. I think the Spanish moss adds a good texture to your DIYs. And I also think it looks so fun with the fall DIYs because it looks like the dried kind of vines and stuff from the pumpkin. And it also adds like a little softness around it, so it's not, you don't have such harsh edges. So I just gently place that all around, and then I take this lamb's ear that came from Dollar Tree, and I am just going to snip off a couple of leaves. So you can use whatever kind, if you have some different foliage that you want to use. We always have like leaves left over from different projects we do. I'm sure any crafter knows that. You maybe have a bag with a bunch of different things. Reach into that for this. Find some different things to stick on here. I really liked the look of the gray tones to the greenish gray tones of the lamb's ear with this. I thought it had a really good natural looking tone. I know that's not what pumpkin leaves look like, but again, pumpkins aren't made out of twine rolls either, so we're just using our imagination here. I'm just using some hot glue to stick that down in there. It slips in really easy in between those rolls of twine to get a nice look there. Now in my stash, I had this package of these little sunflowers. They're adorable and they would look so cute on this. And I kind of go back and forth trying to decide if I put them on the pumpkin, if I don't. You'll have to let me know. And I mean, you'll see me in a minute here go back and forth on if I should put it on or not. I ultimately decide not to put it on, but look how cute. I mean, even now I'm looking at it going, it really does look so cute on there. So you can kind of see that you can embellish it any way that you decide. I have this pipberry here, and you can pick this up at Dollar Tree, Walmart, any craft store, Amazon. And I just decided to wrap it around my fingers. I love to give it kind of that corkscrew look. I love the fact that you're going to add a little, like another color on there. So this comes in white, it comes in orange, it comes in all different colors. And the white is just what I happen to have there. So whatever color you want to choose, it's going to bring a different element, a different texture to your piece. And I just love it. And I think it works really well when you're doing fall DIYs to have this, because when you curl it up in that corkscrew shape, it really does look like the pumpkin vines. And I think it's so fun. And it really does have a good place and a good purpose on it. So I just wrap it around that finial there, and you kind of can pull it. It's a wire, so you can stretch it and see how cute it would look even with that sunflower. I still am trying to decide, do I put it on? Don't I put it on? I really had a hard time deciding. Do you guys ever have a hard time deciding, is it going to be too much if I glue it? I don't want to glue it and then hate it. You'll have to let me know down in the comments if you ever struggle with that, but I do all the time. You can see I ultimately decide to leave it. I still think it turns out really, really cute, but you definitely can jazz this up as much as you want, leave it as simple as you want. I thought this way it matched any type of decor. It had a very neutral tone to it, so that way anybody could take this and put it right into their fall decor. But I love coming up with different items to make pumpkins out of that you don't ordinarily see, and I thought it was really fun to take these twine rolls and do a pumpkin out of those. What do you guys think of this one? This is another really quick and easy project here. I have a bunch of these cutting boards. You can see this is from spring of 2022. I bought a bunch of these when they went like 75% off. And I am just going to do a quick little redo of this little charcuterie board mini one. There's a company called Essential Stencils, and they have been kind enough to send these decals to me. I also have a video coming out that will show some of their stencils in there, but these decals were absolutely beautiful, and I love how they work. I've really only worked with Dollar Tree stencils, and man, there is a big difference when you have a step up in a stencil for how well they transfer. It came with that nifty little scraper tool there that I could use. If you feel like you're missing an area, you just push that paper back down, or the carrier paper, and just kind of put a little more pressure and it will come right off of there. But I thought this sunflower was so beautiful, and then I have these cute little beads that I put on here also. I think they turned out so cute. Now, just to seal all of this in so you're not going to have anything rubbing this design off, I'm just going to put some matte Mod Podge on here and just cover it. I leave the back side of this completely natural in case for some reason, if I gave this as a gift or sold this, I would want somebody to possibly be able to use the one side of it if they would want. But you could also get like a 2 for DIY out of it. You could do one stencil on this side for one season, flip it over and do another stencil for another season. I think on a cute little shelf in your kitchen, or even as a coaster for a cup, these are so perfect for just a cute little decor touch. And you can just see I just go over with that Mod Podge there. I don't really even care that it gets a little bit on the jute twine because you won't even notice there. But just a light coat and you go over the entire surface so you have the same sheen all over your project there. Isn't this just the cutest? I love this beautiful design on here. I'm so excited to work with more of their transfers. I was so very impressed, and I just think this turned out beautiful. If you were giving this as a gift, who would you give this to? I'm just curious. Let me know down in the comments.
This is a fall recreation of one of my more popular tiered tray DIYs. This is one of those gnomes that you pick up at Dollar Tree that has a very questionable paint job. I'm just putting some white paint all over him to start with a blank canvas. Now, as I was doing this, my sweet daughter walked in and she goes, "Mom, I've been creating too." And she made this darling little flower for me just by folding some different paper. I thought I would just show it here because it was just so sweet that she brought this to me. And the little flower was having a little hard time sticking onto the stem, so I thought I would just glue it together. But I thought this was so sweet that she brought this to me to have to sit on my little craft table while I was making some DIYs. So I thought I would just leave this in here and share this cute little moment with you guys as well. Okay, back to painting our cute little guy here. I'm just going to make sure that I get a complete good coat of this white paint. If I need to do two. But this is such a fun project to do for any of these resin pieces. If you're not specifically into gnomes, any resin piece that you find at Dollar Tree or Target's Dollar Spot or Dollar General or anywhere, this is something you could do with all of these pieces and make it look a lot more neutral, more farmhouse, and kind of more your style. Now, to bring a fall touch into him, I'm just going to paint his hat with a pumpkin orange color, just so that way when he sits on my tiered tray, he looks specifically more for fall, rather than the one I had done before was just left all white, just kind of more of a neutral, which is cute, but I thought it would be fun to have some for different seasons. So even like for Christmas, you could do a really cute like green or red hat on there. Now, after your paint's dried, you're just going to take your water-based antiquing wax. I just use Folk Art or Waverly, and I'm just going to take just like a stiff bristled brush and get this antiquing wax all over him everywhere. He's going to look like he's a chocolate bar by the time that you're done with this. So you're putting so much antiquing wax on him. And you just let that sit for a minute or two to kind of solidify a little bit. And then you're just going to take either a wet cloth, a wet wipe, a paper towel, and you're just going to wipe that antiquing wax back. And what's going to happen is it's going to stay in all of those little nooks and crannies, and it's going to make this look almost like stone, like it's been aged, sitting out, aging for a long time. Kind of like he's been sitting in your garden, bringing you good luck for a really long time, and now we're going to bring him in the house. And if you do feel like the antiquing wax is a little heavy, just take a little bit of your white paint. This is just what was left in my brush. And I just went over the high points to kind of brighten up those high points of all of that detail. But look at how cute he looks. I mean, you guys know that some of those paint jobs on those Dollar Tree gnomes or Dollar Tree items are pretty sketchy looking. And I just think he turned out so cute. Perfect to tuck into your tiered tray somewhere. And the possibilities with knowing this little trick and this little hack are endless with the different things that you can make and create. And even just by doing that little touch of his hat to make it more fall, you could do anything for any season. I love these cute little doorknob hangers, I think is what they are. This little beaded garland here with this cute little leaf. But I never can find my letter for my last name, so I thought I would just give this a makeover and make it pretty neutral for fall. That way it doesn't have to have an emblem or a letter or anything on there. So I'm just going to take this, and since that letter is kind of burnt into there, I decided to kind of cover it with some spackling. If you're going to put some paper over the top of this or anything, you wouldn't have to do that because it would totally cover it. But I was just going to paint mine, so I wanted to give it a smoother texture. It does have a little bit of like more like a leaf texture. Like I didn't completely sand it totally smooth, so you can see a little bit of texture on there just to kind of give it a little bit of visual interest. And then I'm just painting the entire thing a white or neutral color. It might also be fun to stain the beads to add a little bit more of a fall color tone if you want, but I did find these rub-on transfers at Dollar Tree and I love the different color of pumpkins, and I thought it would be really fun to kind of put these on here. I'm just trying to find my placement exactly where I want it, if I want it at an angle, so forth. And eventually I decided on just cutting out the specific pumpkins on the design that I wanted. This way I wouldn't lose like any of the pumpkins, so I could use it for more transfers in the future, and I could just specifically decide where I wanted the placement, how full I wanted this to be. Now I'm just using one of the craft sticks or like popsicle sticks to rub this on here. These from Dollar Tree for the most part work so well. I've only had one or two that have been really difficult to work with, and they're like the gold foiled one. So these are very easy. You just want to make sure that you're using enough pressure there. Gently lift it up, and you can see eventually that that design comes right off and transfers right onto your surface. They're so fun to work with. I hope that Dollar Tree keeps bringing these out with different designs for different seasons, because I love to work with them, and I think they really elevate a project kind of to the next level. So I'm just going to repeat this process with all of these transfers, just deciding where on my leaf I want to place them, and then just rub it with the craft stick till it's completely transferred. I also pay attention to the edge, so that way if some of them kind of go off of the edge so it looks like it's a seamless design, I just make sure to pay attention to that as well. I do seal in the rub-on transfer with some Mod Podge. I use just a matte type of Mod Podge. That's just going to help that design not scratch off. It just protects it. And then I love to distress things, so I do highlight the edge here with a little bit of antiquing wax. This just kind of adds that little bit of distressing. Even if you don't do it as heavy as I do recommend doing something to the edge, whether it's sanding or running your finger with a little bit of antiquing wax on it around the edge. That's just going to give you a defined look. It helps it look a little bit more high end, like it's not just like a homemade project, but kind of takes it and looks a little bit more professional. I also just go over the beads with a little bit of that antiquing wax just to kind of rough those up a little bit as well. This is a super simple DIY that anybody can do. It's a great beginner project, something great to work with kids or grandkids. How cute would it be to do one for each of their doors to hang off of? I love to hang them in my kitchen off of jars like this, or even my little tea towel ladder, or even like a china hutch. It's just kind of a fun way to bring that little extra touch of fall into your decor. What do you guys think of this one? I made a DIY very similar to this for springtime, and it was very popular, and I thought it would be so fun to try and do a fall version of it. So I'm just using this pail from Dollar Tree, and you can see I'm just taking one of the blocks of styrofoam that also came from Dollar Tree, and I just kind of cut it into pieces and haphazardly like stuck it together, almost like a game of Tetris, just trying to get all of those pieces in there. You just want a flat surface with whatever you decide to use. It can be a bucket, a pail, a soup can, anything that you decide you want to use is going to work for your base, but you just want that flat surface with the styrofoam. Now I'm just taking some Spanish moss and I'm just trying to decide how much I want, and then I'm just using some hot glue. You can see I'm putting quite a liberal amount there all over that styrofoam, and then I will place all of this Spanish moss. I'll just press that down into, you can kind of see. Now be careful because the Spanish moss, that hot glue can seep through that, so you can potentially burn yourself. So just be really careful when you're doing this, that you're aware of that. So if you start to feel that heat, then you can just lift your hand away, or better yet, just wear some finger protectors so that way you're not, you've got a barrier between your hands and the glue. Now I'm going around on all the edges just to make sure this is glued down very well. And then I'm just using some fencing wire here. So any type of stronger wire that you still can bend, but you want it to be sturdy, almost like a little bit thinner than a coat hanger, I guess. And I just bent that into some hooks, and I'm just going to push that down on this little wreath. Now this wreath came from Hobby Lobby in a pack of 2. I'm sure you can find them in any craft store. I'd already used one, so this was just sitting in my stash. And this is just to show you kind of what the wire looks like there. So I think I end up doing 3 hooks here. You can see I'm just using some wire snippers. I bought those at Lowe's. I get comments about those all the time, and they are wonderful. But any home improvement store is going to have those for you.
Now, once I get all of that wire placed down on this wreath, I do take a little bit of hot glue down there just to help give it a little bit of security, so that way it just kind of stays. It's not going to wobble back and forth. Now, I just picked a little pick of florals from Dollar Tree here that has like the cute little pumpkin there, has some little berries, and then these fall leaves. And then I do end up just reaching into my stash to grab a couple other florals. At the end, you'll kind of see what I do, but it's not, I mean, just however you want to do it. I always say when I do florals like this that I am not a florist. I am not trained. I just do what feels good to me, what looks good to me as I'm doing it. You can make it asymmetrical, completely symmetrical. You can make it however you want. There's no truly wrong way to do this, in my opinion, because if it's going to go into your home, you're going to make it what you want it to be. And then you can see I'm just blasting these with some heat. This is just going to straighten out all of these leaves, so that way they're going to look nice and not wrinkled, which Dollar Tree florals have a tendency to be very wrinkled at times. And then you can just see how I'm stuffing these in here. They go right down into the styrofoam. You could use a little touch of glue if you want to have more of a permanent hold on these, or if this was something that you were going to sell, you would maybe put some glue on the stems before you stick it into the styrofoam. That way nothing's going to come out. Now, I love to be able to reuse things or change things up for different seasons, and so I'm not putting glue on mine just for that reason there. So I reached into my stash to grab that little white pumpkin. I thought the contrast was really cute with that. And then I bought a pack of like 6 of these little orange pumpkins from Dollar Tree. And I just thought the 3 little pumpkins there looked so cute. And that really just kind of hits home that it's fall, even with all of this fall foliage and everything with this wreath. It just looks so perfect. Those pumpkins just really add the perfect touch, in my opinion. Now, I'm trimming off the excess of this Spanish moss, so that way I'm not like shaggy all over the edges. It's just a matter of a personal preference there, whatever you like. Now, I did take a little bit of burnt umber, and I'm just going lightly with a paintbrush around the bottom, and then there's a seam on the pail, and I just do that to give it a little bit of a rusted look, kind of a little bit aged. I don't do too much on the pail, just a little bit. Now, my project would have looked just fine the way that it was, but I did have a couple of little scraps that I used in another project, some florals, and so I thought I would just take a couple leaves off of them to add a little bit more height to it, and I glued a little bit of orange florals around the wreath there like it was growing up over there. I love how this turns out. It's kind of giving strong cornucopia vibes almost to me, but I just think it's beautiful, and I think this is something that you can start fall with, and you can even have it last all the way through Thanksgiving if you keep decorations up that long. What do you guys think of this one? This project was inspired by one that I found on Kirkland's website, and I think it turns out really cute for a lot less money. Now, you can use all Dollar Tree products if you would like to. I'm just showing you the Dollar Tree lamb's ear right there that would look so cute, but I did have a couple of these left over from a bundle that I bought at Walmart, and I do like the more gray green color that comes on those. Plus, I had enough of these to be able to make a little wreath, and so that's why I decided to go with these over Dollar Trees. But if I had had 2 of Dollar Trees, I probably would have used those, and so on and so on. But this is what I'm doing here. So all I'm doing is just bending these into like a circle here, and then I am just going to zip tie both of them together to create a little lamb's ear wreath. Now, you may already have, you can see the zip tie there, you may already have a lamb's ear wreath at your home that you could use, or you could pick one up at the craft store, but I did not have one, and I thought this would be a good economical way to make one. Now, these little windows that come from Dollar Tree, they're darling, but they have these little galvanized metal things on the bottom of them, and I didn't love it, so I was trying to remove it as best I could without damaging the window, and it really just doesn't look the greatest. So this whole time I'm sitting here trying to think of what I'm going to do to cover that area with. Now, you can just see once I have that little wreath made, I'm just going to use some zip ties to zip tie this through those little cutouts on the window there, and that's how I get that wreath to stay put. Now you of course could use glue if you wanted to. I just picked these zip ties up at Dollar Tree. They're in like the automotive section, so check there if you're wanting to grab some, and they come in all different sizes and colors and things like that. And then I'm just taking a few little florals and some pumpkins, and I'm just going to glue them around the wreath. This is just going to give it that fall vibe that I'm going for. And then I have this nativity that I found this going through all of my stash here, and the little base piece of it that you would slide all of the little laser cut pieces into was the perfect size to go on the bottom of this window, and it covered up that little glued area that I kind of tore up when I removed it. Now here I'm just showing you that I did remove the zip ties from the back because I know someone will ask if I did. So I'm just showing you that I did. And then this is a stencil that also came from Dollar Tree this year. Their stencils for fall are darling, and they come with 2 stencils in a package. So make sure when you're looking at those, you flip it over and see that there's a design on the back as well. And this one just says, it says hello fall, but I don't have room for the hello. But the fall is absolutely darling because that A is a little maple leaf. And so I thought that would be super cute to put on this project. So I'm just doing some brown for the letters, the F and the 2 L's. And I'll go back in with some orange and do that on the cute little leaf there. And when I lift that up, you can see how cute that is. But it does look a little plain to me on the sides. So I just go in with a couple extra little leaves, and I do that on both ends. So you'll have to let me know what you think once I get done with that. But I think it looks really cute. Now what I do is I take my emery board. I love to use an emery board to do some filing, and I'm just filing the edges to give it a kind of rustic look. And I do go over the top of this. This is just a matter of personal preference. So if you're wanting to have a more worn look, like this has set out for a while or it is aged, this is something that you can do, is just lightly sand over the letters that you've painted on there with the stencil, and it will kind of fade them a little bit. But I think this window hanging is so cute. I love how this turns out, the little pumpkins and the little florals on there. The one at Kirkland's that I saw was like $70 or something, and I made this for less than $5, so I think it turned out pretty good. In the springtime, Dollar Tree had these darling little fence signs here. You can see I've taken the pail off of one of them, but I picked up 3 of them, and I've used one in a project that I just loved, and now it's time to try another one here. At first, I took this, this is just burnt umber acrylic paint to paint on this sign. Now, I'm not sure if I should have put a coat of Mod Podge down, if I should have sanded it, what I should have done to this. But as I was getting this far, and first of all, I was really disappointed with the coverage because I'm used to chalk paint being thick and having such good coverage. But as I was putting this paint on here, look what happens. It starts to come back up. Like every time I would swipe the brush, it would be bringing more paint back up, even though it was completely dry. And as much as I tried to save this, I had a technique I was wanting to try in mind. It just wasn't working. So I eventually gave up, and I just went to use some black chalk paint, which worked out very well. I didn't have a problem with this pulling up any of that acrylic paint, and the coverage was beautiful. I just had to do 1 coat of black paint on this, and then I just used my heat tool to help that dry, just because I'm one of the most impatient crafters out there. But I do love my heat tool, I will say that. Now I'm using a Crackle medium. I'll paste all the information about what type this is down in my description box. But I'm just going with a light coat all over this entire fence here because I'm going to, what this is going to do is I'm going to let it dry completely and then place another layer of paint on top of this, a contrasting color. So I end up doing white. And what's going to happen is as that white paint dries, this Crackle medium is going to allow that paint to do exactly what it sounds like. It's going to let it crackle and look like it has little cracks and chips in it, like it's aged naturally. So here I'm just taking this white paint and I'm putting this on here. You do want to work fairly quick, and you do not want to go back over an area that you have already painted because that will disturb that Crackle medium and you will not get a good effect. So you can just kind of see how I'm doing this in just little areas that I'm working in. My paint was a little bit thicker, I think, and so I probably could have gotten a little bit better coverage if I had added a little bit of water to it, but it still works out in the end. So you can just kind of see I'm going over that last little bit, and then I kind of remember like, oh yeah, I'm not supposed to disturb these areas that already have paint But look at how good this looks. What happens is it just starts to crackle like that, and it just looks aged, and it's just a fun, different way to distress things. It's fun to play around with different colors too, because that background color will kind of seep through of whatever color you choose to do. Now I'm going to make a pocket sign out of this, and so I am just taking a little piece of fabric here, and I use this for one of my Easter projects, but I thought it's a really good color for a fall, this plaid, so I decided it would be really cute. And I just kind of used the sign as a template to cut it down to the size that I wanted for my pocket. And then I thought it would be really cute to just take all of these little threads off of the edges and fray the edges, so that way it has a little bit more of a rustic look. So that's something that's completely personal preference, but this plaid fabric here frayed perfectly, and I was able to get all of those edges looking very rustic. So you can see how easy it is just to pull those threads right out. I do complete this on all 4 sides, so that way every side will have that fraying on it. And then I'm just putting a little bead of hot glue along the base of this so I can get my base glued down first. In my mind, that was the simplest way to get this started. So I'm just putting that little line of hot glue, and I'm loving my cordless hot glue gun, you guys. So I had a few of you ask what I thought of it, and so far I really do like it. It is nice not being tethered down with cords. I'm still just getting used to getting it put back in and out of its little docking station. Sometimes I feel like that's a little challenging for me, but it just kind of is maybe not as a smooth transition as I want. Anyhow, back to what I'm talking about here. I am just taking this bead of glue, and I put it up both of the sides, and then I left a little space at the top so I could fold this down. I thought that that would look really cute, because once you stick some florals in there, I got thinking like, well, you're not really going to see that frayed part on the top. So I thought it would be fun to fold that down, and that way you will definitely still get that frayed edge. So I'm just taking the glue to do the rest all the way up to the top of the little piece of fabric there. And then this little sign came from Dollar Tree, and I thought this thankful sign was so pretty. I thought it would be so cute pasted, or not pasted, but glued on here. And so I'm just using some hot glue to put on this, and then I will just set that down. Now you could leave it as it was with the fabric, and it would have looked just darling, but I love to kind of plus it and kind of add a little bit more embellishment, and I really thought this thankful sign was just so cute, so I thought it fit really perfectly. And not only that, but now I have that cute galvanized pumpkin for another project if I decide. So now I'm just taking some fall florals, and I'm just taking some little scraps that I have, like pieces that I have cut off that I haven't used in projects, to kind of complete this. And so, but I mean, I would think that just one sprig of florals from Dollar Tree fall would look just fine in there. Like, I thought just this right here looked absolutely darling. I do add quite a bit more to it, but I mean, this is simple, and I mean, it gets the message across, and I think you'd be fine just to stop right here. It just depends on how full you like to make things and what your style is. So I'm just taking, these are like some little wheat or millet type of florals there, and some little fern leaves, and I'm just tucking them in everywhere so I just get a little bit of a variation, and I just thought that looked really cute. Now this is one of those projects that you could put out at the beginning of fall and leave all the way through Thanksgiving, and it would work totally perfect with your decor. Now you could also not put so many, like that sign on the front, the thankful sign, you could have left it blank, and you could change the flowers out for different seasons. So it's up to you what you decide to do, but I love how this turns out. For this project, I decided to go really simple with this. This all is Dollar Tree products that I'm using here. I got these beautiful window clings. There's a sheet on each side here, so you have like front and back of window clings, and this darling little sign. If you see these signs, pick them up. They are so easy to work with, and you can see they have just little tabs in the back to take that piece out. Now, for the sake of just having a simple project, I just flipped that sign over and painted the back side of it. If I decide to put something on the other side of it, then I will definitely do that, but just keep that in mind that was so simple and easy just to pop that out and be able to paint that. Now there's this darling pumpkin patch window cling here. It fit perfectly on the sign. There actually was a few of these that fit really cute, so it's just a matter of personal preference. I thought the word on this, the pumpkin patch, I thought it was just a nice, simple, clean look to it. And so I'm going to add some florals to this, and so I just wanted to have a simple looking sign. Now I'm using my trusty purple school glue stick here. I love this stuff. And it works so good with these window clings to have it adhere to the sign backing that we have. So I'm just making sure that I get a good layer of that glue on there. And then this is almost like magic. It was so cool watching this with this clear window cling, because as you start to push it down, now this dries clear anyways, but as I was rubbing it down, you can tell that it's getting that bond there and clinging exactly to that background there with that glue. So I love to see that because it just kind of vanished right before your eyes. You don't normally get to see that because you're usually doing it on paper. And then I do pull out my brayer and go over. I'm just making sure there's no bubbles, no bumps, anything like that. And then I really was just fascinated in watching that glue completely disappear. So here I just take my brayer, I go up and down and then side to side. And then to have an extra layer here to make sure that everything is going to stay put, I just do some matte Mod Podge and I just do a light layer over this, but I'm careful to go over the entire surface of the sign. That way it will have the same sheen to it. So if the light hits it, you're not going to be only seeing it on just like the window cling. And then I just popped it back into this sign. Now this is absolutely darling the way that it is, but I wanted to add some florals to it and give it a little bit of embellishment. So I'm just taking some Dollar Tree leaves that I have here and I just cut a couple pieces off. Now this is one of my favorite hacks to do with Dollar Tree leaves because they always seem to be so wrinkly, is you can just blast them with your heat tool. I just lay them flat and I just blast it for a couple seconds. These do have like the plastic veining on them so they can melt, so just be cautious of that, but it's just a couple seconds and they flatten right out. I love this hack and I use that all the time. So now I'm just going to layer these leaves here, just kind of do the different colors and have them stacked one on top of the other. I do 3 leaves and then I do a little pumpkin here, and this pumpkin came in a set of like 5 or 6, and I just took the little stick off of it, or the little twist tie like thing there, and then I just end up gluing all of these to the corner of the sign. And I think this turns out so simple. It was such an easy project and I think it has a very high impact, especially for how simple it was. What do you guys think of this sign? Is this something that you would use in your fall decor? Do you guys ever start making a project with one idea in mind and then it completely keeps changing as you go along? This is exactly that project for me. So I'm just starting with this little sign from Dollar Tree, and this ends up being mostly a Dollar Tree project. And it had this cute little 3D pumpkin on here, and by 3D I just mean that it was popped out a little bit with some little foam blocks. So I'm just using my scraping tool just to kind of get under that and peel that off. And I want to leave those on the back. Now, if you're building this from scratch and you're using like one of just the regular wood pumpkins, you would just use some of the little square blocks on the back from Dollar Tree to pop your pumpkin out. But where this already had those foam risers on there, I just left those. Now I'm just using a piece of scrap paper. You can see that I'd used it for another project there, so it was just sitting in my scrapbook stash. So any paper would work. You could even paint this if you wanted. I think a plaid would look really pretty. I just didn't have any plaid, but I really liked this kind of fall feel, this autumn feel to this paper with the cute little pumpkins all over there. I'm just using that Elmer's school glue to get a nice good coverage on the surface there, and then I just place that paper on there, and I'm going to get my brayer and just roll this over. This is going to get out any bubbles, smooth it out. It's going to make sure you have a really good bond between your paper and the surface. Now if you're a Mod Podger and that works well for you and you have a lot of success with that, or however you like to adhere your paper to surfaces, definitely use that. I'm just showing you what works best for me. Now to make sure that the edges are all cleaned up, I just take a fingernail file and I go around all of those edges just in a downward motion to clean that up so I don't have an excess of paper hanging over the edge. Now I'm using just a little bit of hot glue so I can get this backing back in the sign. Now it takes me a second here to get this. I just want to make sure that I'm getting everything lined up there, and then I just push that down and it should pop right back into place. Now I'm using another kind of scrapbook paper here. This is kind of a wood tone, and I decided to trace out the pumpkin. Originally I was going to paint this pumpkin, but I thought I found this wood paper when I was going through my paper to find that original pumpkin one. And I thought, well, this kind of matches the frame. And so I'm just taking this. I thought it would be kind of fun to have a natural looking pumpkin on there. I do kind of like a bubble cut around this because I want there to be excess so we can sand it off and have it look really nice. Now this pumpkin had some writing on it and the writing was doused in glitter. So I sanded that off so I would have a flat surface to work with. When I put that paper down, you don't see those letters pop up or anything. So I'm just going to use, again, that Elmer's school glue on my surface, and I turn that pumpkin upside down as you saw to place that paper on. Now I did use my brayer, I just didn't show that. I got everything, did the whole system again with getting that paper adhered to this, and then I'm just going to sand in a downward motion. You can see how well that works there to get that off. And I'm just going to use some antiquing wax on like a baby wipe or wet paper towel to go around the edge. That way you don't see that torn paper. And then I just take the excess and just kind of go over my paper there. That just kind of ties in that antiquing wax around the edge with the rest of your pumpkin. Now I have these little trucks from Dollar Tree, and I actually was just looking for the little sunflower. But as I pulled these trucks out, I thought this truck would probably be really cute laying on here. I mean, look at how darling that is. So this is kind of when this project started to take shape this way. So it changed again right here, but I loved the look of this on there. I love that blue truck. If you see these at Dollar Tree, I think they have a couple different colors of them, and they have different flowers in them. So the blue had this bright yellow sunflower in there, which is darling. So I'm just trying to make sure of how to get that sunflower positioned here because I wanted to make sure that it was facing outward so you could really see it. It wasn't sideways. And so I just kind of play around with it a little bit. And these are like hanging ornaments or something. And so I just took that wire off that was hanging with it to put it on here. And the stuff that I glue on here covers up the hole to that, and so you won't be able to see that. Now I took a piece of wheat off of one of them. So they don't all have the same embellishment. So one of them has like the pumpkin, and I think one of them has the wheat or something. But I just took this little sprig of wheat because I thought that would look really cute glued behind there. And so I just took a little, you can see it's a little wooden dowel, and I cut two little pieces off of it to help pop that up. The wood squares, and I apologize that you have to see the top of my head here, but the wood squares you get in the craft section at Dollar Tree were a little too big for this. You could see it from behind. So just anything you have, like even a popsicle stick cut a couple of times to pop that truck out. The reason you want to pop that out is that pumpkin that's on there is a little bit wide, and so it naturally makes it pop out. So I just wanted to make sure that it wasn't like sitting at an angle, that it looked really nice. And so you can see I just tuck that little piece of wheat back there with some hot glue, and then I just do the same thing with this sunflower. I just made sure that it looks great. Just a little bit of hot glue there. And I'm loving my glue gun that I have. You guys know I got a new glue gun recently that's a cordless one, and I'm loving it so far. And so you can see how I place that in there. Now there's a little bit on the pumpkin that has like where I ripped that sunflower off that you can see the styrofoam of the pumpkin. So you can see, I kind of see that there. To fix that, I just put a little bit of glue on a petal and just push that right into the pumpkin. For a project that kept changing shape, I absolutely love how this one turns out. I think it's super cute. I love the whimsy to it. I think that blue really pops on there with that sunflower. And I love the fact that you can take a piece that was cute to begin with, that sign was cute to begin with, and you can tailor it to your own decor needs or use it to DIY with. What do you guys think of this one?
This is such a simple DIY. I hope that you try this because it was so fun. Now, I did find this wire in the jewelry section at Walmart, but you could easily just use, zip ties, you could just use twine to tie these off with however you wanted. I end up making 8 loops. I start out with 6, but realize I need more, just of some jute twine. So this is just twine that came from Dollar Tree. I wrap it around each of my hands 20 times. So you could do more or less depending on your style, but just so you know, I did 20 times that I wrapped around, and then I snipped it off, and then I just kind of tied it off with that wire. I wrapped that around so that way it stayed in place. But again, you could just use a short piece of jute twine to tie these off in the middle, so you wouldn't have to buy an extra thing of wire or anything if you didn't have that on hand. Now, after you get all of your rings, now remember that I end up doing 8, but I started with 6. I'm just going to use some hot glue and glue each of these together in the center. So where you have tied these together, either with your wire or the twine, I'm just using a little bit of glue. If you need to use your silicone finger protectors, do that because you are working very close with your fingers and the hot glue. So just pay attention to that. But I just waited for each little section to dry before gluing on the next section. And I decided to glue 3 and then 3. So I was doing like one half of the pumpkin and then the other half of the pumpkin. And so you can kind of see how I did that here. Now, depending on how tightly or the size of your hands or your loops, however you did your loops here, 6 may be enough. But when I got them together, I just realized that I wanted to have it a little bit more full. At this point, I just glued them to a stick that I found in my yard. It looked like a really cute pumpkin stem. So I'm gluing those first 3 onto this one here. And then I just put some glue around and I will glue this other half onto the pumpkin. This is when I got them together. And you can see I reached my fingers through to kind of grip those together around that stem. But you can kind of see the side of my pumpkin there that it really did just need another loop in there. So again, I just wrapped it around 20 times. I tied it off either with my wire or your jute twine, and then I just kind of reached in and glued it in. Once I added that, you can kind of see I felt like it needed another one to kind of make it a little bit more even. So again, the same process. This would be something so fun to do with like kids or grandkids. You of course would want to just help them with the hot glue part, but I mean they could easily wrap the twine around and everything and make these cute little pumpkins that it ends up being so darling. I absolutely just love how this turns out. So this last one I did with just tying the twine on there. So if you need to rewind that to see, but that does show you kind of how I tied the twine on instead of using the wire. So I glue that one in and I just fluff it up a little bit to kind of make sure that it looks as full as I want it. And then I just wanted to put some hot glue around here because I'm adding some Spanish moss. I've been loving using Spanish moss in my fall decor. I don't know if it's just that it gives it a special softness or if it looks like pumpkin vines or what it is, but I've really enjoyed it. And I do just trim it up because I don't like it to be too wild and out of control. And then I have this pick that's from Dollar Tree, and I love these little silvery greenish blue leaves. So you can see I'm just putting some glue on the end of that, and I'll glue that in just as a little bit of the pumpkin leaf there to kind of add a different color to it. I'm just really pleased with how it looks. And I felt like it needed a little something else, so I just take some raffia and I'm just making a little bow. So I just kind of loop it around several times and then just tie that off in the center. This just adds another little bit of texture to it. I felt like the bow just kind of sets it off there a little bit, and I really love how that looks on there. I just think this turns out absolutely adorable, especially for how simple it was to make. It would be so cute sitting on a coffee table, just a perfect decor. This would be perfect to leave out for Thanksgiving, even all season long. What do you guys think of this one? I would like to thank you so much for joining me for today's compilation video. I hope that you enjoyed all of these DIYs. If you had a favorite, let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear which ones you guys like the best. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting! If you like the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.